If you've been watching this channel the past few weeks, you'll know that I've been working my way through classical tragedy, Greek and Roman, and that I've also been making little detours along the way to see what film versions of these plays are available on YouTube. So after having finished Medea by Euripides, I decided to check out the film versions that there are on YouTube. Now, if you search for Euripides Medea on YouTube, the very first video that will come up, or at least the first video that comes up for me, is one from a channel called Emily Alexander, which was uploaded 9 years ago. This video was also recommended to me by somebody in the comments. Worthless Winner, a few weeks ago, recommended it to me as a good version of Euripides Medea to watch. But I think even if that hadn't been recommended to me, it does seem to be the first one that pops up. It's it was a televised performance from 1983, which was based on a 1982 stage play, which was then just adapted for television. And when I say adapted for television, it means that they just filmed the performers on the stage. So, I gave this version a watch. Now, this is, I believe, copyrighted material. This is one of those YouTube videos where the very first thing that pops up when you press play on the video is the copyright warning from the FBI. You know, those ones that used to accompany VHS videos. This video is under copyright. Any unauthorized duplication is a federal crime, blah, 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 blah. And so it's kind of funny that whoever owns this channel uploaded the whole thing, including the copyright warning. But on the other hand, it's been 9 years now and nobody's taken it down, so the copyright holders can't be too concerned about it. And it is from years ago now, so it's probably not a priority for them. Interestingly enough, I think if you search around on YouTube more for other film versions of Medea, there are a couple other channels which have uploaded the same version. And they must all be uploading the same file because these other channels also include the piracy warning at the beginning of it. But anyways, it is a decent copy. And it is from, a decent film version of the stage play. The thing is, though, as I was watching this video, I noticed that the dialogue was very different than the dialogue I had read in this version here. And initially, I was just chalking it up to different translators because, obviously, translations can vary wildly, right? And I thought, I was thinking, isn't it interesting how different it can sound with a different translator? That was my initial thoughts. But as I kept watching it, I kept thinking, I don't remember that line at all. Like, it's not just a difference in translation. It's just that whole line was nowhere in the version I read. So I began comparing it, bringing out my book and going through and trying to compare what I was hearing to what I had read. And it was very different. And there was dialogue in the stage play that was nowhere in this. So I did some searching around on Google and Wikipedia. And it turns out that this version is from a translation by Robinson Jeffers, which is described as freely adapted from Euripides. So, yeah, that's an interesting way of phrasing it. I guess that means that this is not a literal translation. This is somebody taking the idea of Euripides' poem and choosing to adapt it in a manner that, in a very free manner. Now, this guy Robinson Jeffers, I've never heard of him before, but he appears to be an interesting guy. There's a whole Wikipedia article on him, which you can check out. He did know Latin and Greek, so he could have read the original Greek. No doubt he did read the original Greek. But then he chose to make a free adaptation of it. Now, exactly how he made his adaptation, or what his criteria was, or what he chose to leave out or leave in, I'm not exactly sure. And I did try to search this on Google, and I didn't find anything. Now, granted, I gave up after like 10 minutes. I didn't, when you Google something, there's like 100 different pages, but nobody ever makes it past the first 2 pages on a Google search. I mean, that's me. I didn't make it past the second page on the Google search. Perhaps that information is out there on the internet somewhere, but I didn't find it. So it's some sort of very loose adaptation of the original play, where the scenes are still there, the thrust of the dialogue is still there. I mean, the conversations still have the same outcome as the original play, but the individual lines are quite different from the original play. Now, as always, take me with a grain of salt, because I'm not an expert. I've only read one translation of Medea so far, so I'm entirely reliant on this one translation. But that appears to be what's going on here. Now, a little further research reveals that this Robinson Jeffers translation, or free adaptation, was a big Broadway hit in 1947. And apparently was on Broadway for some years after that, 1947 into the 1950s, in which the part of Medea was played by Judith Anderson, sometimes referred to as Dame Judith Anderson, an Australian actress who was very famous and very well regarded in her day, and as you can check out her Wikipedia page, she's been in a million different things, including Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. She played the High Vulcan priestess in that movie. A little interesting trivia for you Star Trek nerds out there. I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. But yes, it was a big Broadway hit back in that day. The Robinson Jeffers translation, adaptation, starring Dame Judith Anderson. And that version was filmed for TV back in 1959. And that 1959 TV version is also available on YouTube. Now, because I like to be thorough about these things, I contemplated going back to the 1959 version and watching that one first, but I decided against it. Now, when I was doing Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus the King, I ended up watching 3 different versions of that. The 1957 version, the 1968 version, and the 1986 version for the BBC. But in those cases, each one was a different translation, so I was exposing myself to different translators' views of the play. And those are all more or less faithful adaptations of the original Greek. Here, because it was so different from Euripides' original, and because it would have been the same translation both times, I thought, I don't need to watch this twice. I'll just stick with the 1983 version because I'm halfway through that already. And because I have kids, I tend not to watch these in one sitting. I watch like 10 minutes a night, and it takes me like 5 minutes. Sorry, it takes me 5 nights to work through one movie. So that was another reason not to go back to the original 1959 version. Sorry. not the original. The original would have been the Broadway play in 1947, but the pre-existing 1959 version. But it is on YouTube, and I will link to it in the description down below if you're interested in checking it out. So that was the pre-existing version. Now this 1983 version is a filmed version of the 1982 revival of Medea, which has the original star, Judith Anderson, in it, but this time she's playing a supporting role. She's playing Medea's nurse. And Medea is played by somebody called Zoe Caldwell, who I also have never heard of before, but she has got a Wikipedia article as well, and she apparently was a very famous actress back in her day. And she's also Australian, so I guess they went from one Australian actress to another one. She was, according to Wikipedia, born in 1933, so if my math is correct, she would have been about 50 by this point, playing Medea. Which, I don't know, is that about right? How old is Medea supposed to be in this play, like based upon the Euripides original? She's, she's obviously had a few adventures with Jason at this point, and she's already had kids, but the kids are young, right? The boys are, well, in this version, they're played by actors who look to be about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. So maybe arguably Medea should be played by a slightly younger woman. I don't know. Of course, on the stage, you're supposed to be allowed a fair amount of leeway in these kind of things. I've got to say, I'm not quite sure I cared for her performance. Now, take me with a grain of salt, because she got a lot of awards for this. And a lot of people really like her, so I may be the outlier here, but I felt like she was... I found her style of speaking distracting. She was giving a very breathy performance. So like after every line, it would be like... like a big inhale and exhale at the end of every line. And she also tended to draw out the final consonants, particularly the sibilants. So a lot of sounds at the end of her lines, which I found a little bit distracting and also seemed to slow the pace way down. Now, to give credit where credit is due, it was quite a dramatic performance. I mean, she was really putting a lot of emotion into the lines. It gave an impression of a Medea who seemed to be a little bit not fully there, a little bit crazy. But then again, that's the part, right? The Medea is supposed to be a little bit not fully there and a little bit crazy in this play. And I guess in the original myth, in order to do what she is driven to do. As I said before, the conversations do take place in the same order that they took place in the original play, and the general thrust of each conversation is pretty much the same. It's just that the lines have been freely adapted, so the individual dialogue has been changed, but the plot is and the conversations are pretty much the same. I think the big differences that I noted, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm only going off of one translation here, which I'm comparing to the 1983 televised version. But the king of Athens, Aegeus, in the version I have here in this book, he kind of just shows up out of nowhere. He just like kind of shows up in the play, and he's like, "Oh, hello, Medea." Unless I'm forgetting something, but I don't remember him being foreshadowed in the movie version. the nurse is already anticipating that he will arrive, and that he can possibly be a safe haven for Medea. The other big difference is in the play version at the end. Medea is on a chariot at the very end when Jason confronts her. So yeah, she's appearing above. Let's see, can you read that? I'm not sure this is going to focus. Otherwise, you'll just have to take my word for it that I'm reading this correctly. Medea appears above in the chariot of the sun. So the gods have given her a chariot, which the essay at the end of the play in this edition I have points out that this is, for all she's done, this is kind of a weird indication that the gods have not totally abandoned Medea. She's still getting some favor from the gods. And as a result of that, Jason has to plead for the bodies of his children, the two boys which Medea has killed. And Medea refuses to give him the bodies. And there's nothing Jason can do about it because he's down here and Medea's in the chariot up here. I have no idea how they would have staged this in ancient Greece. But that's the stage directions that's given here in this written version. In the 1983 televised version, there's no magic chariot. So both Jason and Medea are standing down on the same level, which made it a little bit strange to me that Jason was pleading for the bodies of his sons and Medea was refusing them. And I think to myself, well, just go get them. The bodies you want are right there. Just, push Medea out of the way and go get them. I didn't quite understand how in the world of this movie version, this 1983 movie version, why Jason couldn't get the bodies of his sons that he wanted. So those were the two big differences that I noticed. Other than that, the plot did seem to be pretty much the same. Now, it's both in the written version and in the movie version. It's a horrifying play with a horrifying conclusion. And even though having read through it once and kind of knowing when the beats were coming, I was just dreading seeing this in the film version. I knew exactly at what point in the play the boys were going to be killed, but I was dreading seeing it happen. And in the televised movie version, it is kind of like a horror movie at that point. Like, it's coming, but when the horrible scene actually happens, and the whole thing happens off stage, both in the written version and in the televised TV movie version. But you can hear the screams, you can hear the reaction of the chorus, you know what's going on, and it's a horrifying scene. It's meant to be. The televised version plays it like a horror movie. And it comes off, I think, at that point, like you are watching a horror movie. The other thing is, again, something that happens off stage, but the description of how the princess and her father are kind of burned alive by this cursed magical garment that Medea has given to the princess, which eats up her skin and also eats up her father's skin when her father tries to save her. It's described in graphic detail in both versions, but I think, I don't know, maybe I have to go back and compare this line by line, but I think it came off more horrible in the televised version, and the version I don't know why I put my notes over there. In the version freely adapted by Robinson Jeffers, that description of the, even though it happens off stage and it's just recounted by a description, the description of that cursed dress burning both the princess and her father and the kind of the charred flesh dropping down, and that gory description seems to me to be more horrifying in Robinson Jeffers' version than in the version I read here. The actor who plays Jason, I think, did a good job of that in the televised version. He's someone with gray hair, which, again, how old is Jason supposed to be in this myth? I mean, he would. I don't know. I could see him being a younger man, and I don't know. As always, take me with a grain of salt. I'm not an expert, but my impression was that he was a young man when he set off on the quest. He met Medea. That their sons are, again, depicted as still being very young in this version. I don't know, but yeah, they're portrayed as being a middle-aged couple. So. But yeah, the actor who plays him does a very good job, and again, the dialogue, freely adapted by Robinson Jeffers, does a good job of creating this bit of a cad, this adventurer whose everything is perfectly justified in his own mind, and he doesn't really understand how horrible he's being to Medea. So kind of that selfishness mixed with cluelessness, mixed with arrogance, comes through, I think, quite well. In the Robinson Jeffers freely adapted version, it's foreshadowed, I think, much heavier that Medea is going to kill her sons. And in a way, maybe that is a little bit, requires some suspension of disbelief, because it's obvious that Medea is going crazy at this point, and she inquires as to how devastated Jason would be if the sons were to be killed. And so you're watching this and you think, okay, Jason should put this together, that she's planning some sort of evil against the sons. But in a way, I think that was more hinted at than in the written version, than in the original version. But then I guess you could argue that nobody ever thought their own mother would kill them. So I guess that would be the argument in Jason's defense, that even though Medea is dropping all these hints that she's going crazy and that she's looking for a way to hurt him, and that she's confirming that he would be devastated if anything happened to his sons. Maybe that's the defense, that nobody anticipates the mother would actually do this. I mean, it's a really twisted play in that regard. And like I said in my review of the written version, apparently Euripides was influenced by the breakdown of traditional morals during the Peloponnesian War to be able to depict this kind of very twisted scene in the play. Seeing it in the film version is all the more horrible because you see the children and you see Jason embrace them, and they're depicted as idealized children. So they're these very sweet little boys who are just kind of hugging their father and hugging their mother and not creating any trouble. And of course, as any parent knows, in real life, they wouldn't be quite that idealized. They wouldn't just be cute little boys who stand around waiting to be hugged. In real life, Jason and Medea would have to be like, oh, okay, quit fighting. Just be quiet for a second. Daddy and Mommy need to have a conversation. They'd be creating a lot more mischief and chaos. But of course, that's the role they have to play in the scene, in this play, is to be the idealized, sweet little innocent children, to drive home what a tragedy it is when they get killed So very hard to watch, seeing Jason hug his sons and hold his sons fondly, knowing that Medea is going to kill them before the play is over. I mean, of course, that's the kind of play that you're in for. But it is, I mean, I was kind of thinking, why was this play so successful on Broadway in the 1940s? Why was this such a big hit? I mean, you understand that this was popular in ancient Greece because, you know, those Greeks were just into those tragedies, right? That's just what the Greeks went in for. But this kind of very horrific play, why was this so popular on Broadway back in the 1940s? But yeah, it was for whatever reason, huh? So, to sum up, a very difficult play to watch, but very powerful in its way. Different dialogue than the original Euripides, but the same plot, the same points come out in each conversation. So I don't want to give the impression that the original is just completely out the window. As the characters are talking, they are covering the same ground that's covered in the original. It's just that the dialogue is very freely adapted. Yeah. What was my main point again? To sum up, interesting adaptation, very difficult to watch, but I suppose these Greek tragedies are supposed to be difficult, right? They're not supposed to be feel-good plays. They're supposed to kind of rip you up inside and leave you feeling devastated when you get to the end of it. There's this whole Greek thing about the catharsis of tragedy, right? And boy, does this play do that. I mean, you feel absolutely devastated when you get to the end of it. But that's what it's supposed to do. So difficult to watch, but it's a tragedy. Okay, I'm going to finish off here. I'll try and remember to link to everything I talked about in the description down below so you can check it out yourself.